It's time to talk about LFOs. In this video, we'll explore how to use LFOs to create movement and modulation in your sounds. What is an LFO? An LFO is an oscillator that operates at a low frequency, which is why it's called a low-frequency oscillator. Instead of generating sound directly, LFOs are used to modulate other parameters, creating movement and change over time. You can think of an LFO as a tool for shaping how a sound changes repeatedly. For example, you can use an LFO to make the volume of a sound go up and down rhythmically, to make a sound wobble, or to make the filter cutoff open and close over time. LFOs are especially useful for creating rhythmic effects, evolving textures, or subtle vibrato or tremolo. So what's the difference between an LFO and an envelope? While envelopes control a sound's evolution once, LFOs create continuous, repeating modulation, which can give your sounds a lot more movement. When we look at this LFO section, we see what looks like a preset menu, because it is. If you ever don't want to draw your own shapes, you can use these as inspiration. They're basic shapes, right? Sine, square, triangle, and a whole lot more. I prefer to just draw my shapes, but it's important to experiment with both. Let's look at the two most important controls for LFO: frequency or rate, and mode. There's several options here, but I want you to understand the difference between the concepts of trigger and envelope. Envelope, you're just recreating what's going on up here. Whatever you're doing will only happen once. Envelope mode is great for creating legato type sounds, or sounds that go for a long time. So we can make a ramp up shape like this, and we're just really looking at the beginning of this shape. Let's drag this to the level 0 to 100. In envelope mode, you can get the sweeping effect you want without making it wobble. On the other hand, there's trigger mode. On trigger mode, once your sound gets from left all the way to right, it will repeat at whatever rate you decide. 1/2, 1/4, 1/8. This means for every bar, it will happen 8 times. You can also select this music note here, and you have different options for how it syncs to your song. Tempo triplets or tempo dotted are particularly useful if that's a style of song you're writing. Let's assign an LFO to the cutoff of the filter. Let's look at a few popular combinations. We'll change this to a high pass filter and put this over 1/2. A shape like this one is really good for growl type sounds. We switch it back to low pass, changes to 1/8, and we can keep the same shape, and now we'll have a nice wobbling low pass bass. Normally when you're making a bass wobble, you want the level to start at 0 and go to 100. But say you had chords and you wanted just a little bit of movement. This level doesn't have to be all the way at 0. The higher the level knob is, the further away it gets from 0. LFOs aren't just good for making basses wobble, they're really great for chords too. What if we dragged LFO1 onto the wavetable position? That's a really nice synth. That's it for LFOs. You've learned how to use LFOs to add movement and modulation to your sound, how different LFO shapes affect modulation, and how you can control the rate of the LFO to shape the modulation. See you in the next video.